Hey everybody, it's You Had to Ask, the show where I answer your questions. And this week my first question comes from Larry Barthel, who says, Question. As atheists, I believe you and I share the lack of belief in an afterlife of any sort and acknowledge that our time is limited in this lifetime. Does that fact ever feel disappointing to you? I love a good book, and part of that love is seeing how it all plays out in the end, seeing how the characters advance through their story, and if the story ends, how they end up. I love the little, and then this is what happened after the events of this movie clips during the credits for many movies. And I love the ending of Harry Potter, where it shows them 16 or whatever years later, with kids going to Hogwarts and all of them being cordial adults. However, it does disappoint me that I will never know how humanity continues and how it turns out. Do we ever get Star Trek level technology and explore the stars? Do we ever develop mutant powers? Do we even exist 5 years after my death? Does the fact that you and I will never know these things ever bother or disappoint you? Any thoughts on this are appreciated. Love the show and thanks. It is a little disappointing that we won't get to see how humanity is doing 1,000 years from now, let's say. But it's like Christopher Hitchens said when he was facing his own death. He said the worst part is not knowing that you have to leave the party at some point, but knowing that the party is going to continue in your absence. That's kind of a tough pill to swallow, and it's completely selfish and it's completely egotistical. You know, I want to see what happens. I want to know what finds out. But that impulse, that curiosity, is one of the major things that makes me so happy to get up in the morning. That urge to know what's going to happen, what happens next. And knowing that there is a limit on that there is a horizon to that I can never go past, that I'm going to live so long and then I'm going to die, and I as a person am going to be gone, and I'm never going to know what happens next. Yeah, that's kind of a bummer. Firefly 4F4, you've been hired to remake your favorite bad movie. Which film is it, and how would you change it to be faithful to the original while making it, well, good? You know, I gave this question some thought, actually, and I sort of did a mental review of some of my favorite bad movies, and the movie I picked to answer your question with, Andrew, is it's actually not one of my favorite bad movies, but it is a bad movie based on one of my favorite things, and it is the Will Smith version of I Am Legend. The original book, I Am Legend, or the novella, is one of my favorite horror stories, one of my favorite stories, really, period. I just love that story. I love it. Just has a sadness and a beauty to it, and to see it made into such a horrible, empty, big spectacle blockbuster movie as it was in that case was just really disappointing. I mean, there have been other film versions of it. You know, Vincent Price did a version of it called The Last Man on Earth. And of course, Charlton Heston was in The Omega Man, which was based on it. But neither of those were very good. And I mean, the Vincent Price version was all right, and the Omega Man is quality cheese. But neither of them are like really, neither of them really capture the tone and the feeling of the story. And neither does the Will Smith version, which is just, you know, it's big budget Hollywood schlock basically. So I would want to do that. I would want to remake I Am Legend and do that right, and try to keep it really close as I possibly could to the original book, specifically the tone of the book, the sort of somber, sorrowful, sad, elegiac tone of the book, where there's this guy, the one guy who is left alive while everybody else has either been killed or turned into vampires, and he's alone, and his life consists of just trying to survive. And you know, the few connections he's able to make with his dog, with other people that he eventually does run into, only serve to amplify his loneliness and his isolation. That's the kind of movie I would want to make out of I Am Legend, because it shouldn't be like a rousing, thrilling blockbuster, crowd-pleasing movie. It's a sad story, and it should be a deeply sad movie. Lord Marlin, hey Steve, I agree with you that the core motive of the men's rights movement is ill-conceived, but how do you feel about the parts of society where women actually do have it better than men? I'm talking about things like divorce, where women disproportionately end up with custody of children and their former husbands pay higher alimony, or the fact that women can't be drafted in times of war, or that people don't take male rapes seriously, but female rape is taken very seriously. There's a lot of little things like this, so I'm not going to list them all here, but I feel these are issues that need to be addressed as we work towards gender equality. What do you think? Yeah, and these are some of the issues that men's rights activists like to hide behind when they are challenged on their misogyny and their sexism and their rape apologetics in order to pretend that they are, in fact, a legitimate political civil rights movement. Well, we're the ones fighting for men's rights in the courts, and we're the ones fighting for men's rights and equality, and we're the ones, speaking up for the male victims of rape. And they like to say that. I don't believe for a second that most people in the men's rights movement actually give a shit about any of that, because the character of their movement overall tells me that they don't. But yeah, there are issues, there are areas, pockets in society where you could argue that men have it worse than women. I'm not convinced that all of these issues, or even any of these issues, is best understood as a gender inequality issue. And I will explain what I mean. One of the examples that you didn't cite in your question, but that other people brought up in other comments on the most recent You Had to Ask video, is circumcision, male circumcision. And why is male circumcision accepted as just sort of an everyday tradition, a rite that most people in our society, most men in our society are subjected to as babies, but female circumcision is seen as this intolerable practice. And if you look at that issue purely in terms of who is getting circumcised and who isn't, and whose circumcisions are tolerated and whose circumcisions are not, then yeah, it looks like women have that a lot better, because there is outrage over female circumcision, at least in our part of the world, and there is very little noise against male circumcision. But here's the reason why I don't think that is a gender inequality issue. Men are not circumcised as a means of oppression from women. Men are circumcised, if anything, if there is any oppressing going on, it is from the church exerting pressure on parents. Not the pressure from circumcision doesn't come when you're a baby. It comes when you're a parent and it's time for you to circumcise your baby. That's the point of pressure. The parents are the ones that are being controlled by circumcision, not the actual babies being circumcised. And I don't think that's a gender issue. I think that's a religious issue. And now it's often not even that. It's become just an accepted tradition in our society where people just do it. And a lot of times don't even think about why they're doing it. It's just, well, you have a baby. Is it a boy? Well, you got to get him circumcised. Female circumcision, on the other hand, I would argue, where it is practiced, is used as a tool of female oppression by males in that society. Female circumcision is an infliction of harm on women intended to rob them of their sexuality, to deny them sexual pleasure, to make them easier to control and easier to use and dominate by men in their society. I think it's a very different issue. If you want to look at it just purely as who's getting cut and who isn't, and our attitudes toward it, yes, men get circumcised way more often than women. But if you look at it in terms of why they're being circumcised, what is the motivation, what is the cultural reasoning behind that circumcision, I don't think that male circumcision is best understood as a gender inequality issue. Also, as far as another issue you brought up is, and that comes up a lot, is the selective service. Men have to register for the draft and women don't. I find it really kind of offensive. Not from you necessarily, because you're just asking a question and it's an honest question and it's a good question. But when men's rights activists or anti-feminists in general bring up the draft, or bring up equality in military service in general. There's a lot of really, really self-righteous chest beating from anti-feminists about, men are the ones who fight the wars, and men are the disposable citizens, because we go out and we fight and we die and we just get replaced, and women are the ones who stay back on the home front and they're completely safe and they're the ones that we're protecting, and blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of that, and that's really, really offensive, because gender equality in the military is a feminist issue. It's not as if the men's rights movement or people who consider themselves enemies or opponents of feminism have been spending the last 30 or 40 years trying to get gender equality in military service. It's feminists that have done that. Feminists fought and continue to fight for equality of women in combat, in military promotions. And actually, feminist organizations have petitioned in the past for the selective service to be gender equal, so that women would have to register as well as men. So this idea that somehow it's male oppression, that men are being oppressed by having a majority male military service, when it's women and feminists who have fought for gender equality in military service in the United States and have been resisted by men and by anti-feminist forces every step of the way, is just ludicrous and offensive, and people should be ashamed to even say it in public. It's so stupid. The amount of female and male equality in the military that we have now is the result of feminists advocating for women to have a greater shared role. Metzen Young, hey Steve, was wondering if you have seen any of the Marvel and DC stuff coming out of Comic-Con. If so, what do you think of everything that has come out so far? Batman vs. Superman footage, Wonder Woman, the new Marvel lineup, and Avengers footage, possible decisions and things you would like to write in both cinematic universes. Yes, got to stick to canon. Best, Metzen. Actually, I didn't see a lot of the Marvel stuff coming out of Comic-Con. I don't really make it a point to pay attention to Comic-Con. I notice things when people post it on my Facebook wall, or if there's like a big story, coming out of Comic-Con, I'll check it out and see what it is. But I don't really pay that much attention to Comic-Con. I really don't care. But yeah, I saw the Batman Superman stuff. I saw the leaked sort of pirated iPhone footage of the teaser with Superman standing, flying above with the bat signal, and Batman there in like the Dark Knight Returns armor. I saw the picture of Gal Gadot in her Wonder Woman costume. I mean, I just don't know. Everything I hear about this Batman Superman movie just it makes it more and more discouraging for me. I don't have confidence in the director. I don't have confidence in the writer. At least not one of the writers, the David Goyer, the main writer. Although I think his script has been rewritten for the shooting script. I don't have confidence in the people. The movie hasn't been made yet. I hope it's a good movie. I look forward to it being a good movie. But I just don't have any reasonable expectation of that. I thought Man of Steel was a bad movie, and I think the lesson that they learned from Man of Steel was, this is how we should do it, so let's do another one like this, and that's not good news for me. The Wonder Woman costume looked okay. I like that it's more monochrome than the red, white, and blue thing that she wears in the comics. I understand that might be difficult to translate to film and expect people to take it seriously. The way they've got it now, she looks a lot like Xena, which is understandable, because Xena herself was sort of a descendant, like a daughter character of Wonder Woman. So, the big screen version of Wonder Woman has some Xena influence as far as the character design. And I have no problem with that. I thought it looks fine. The leaked footage, the teaser itself, doesn't really do a whole lot for me. I mean, I'm not... The prospect of Batman and Superman like facing off in a live action movie, that by itself just isn't enough to sell me on the movie. I mean, when I was 15 years old and I was like a huge, Batman, Superman geek, despite my pretensions to being a cinephile, an adolescent cinephile, that would have done it for me. If I had seen that footage, that few seconds of, Batman on the roof glaring up with the eyes lit up at Superman who's floating above him, through the bat signal, that would have completely sold me on the movie. I would have been like, oh yes, bring it on. Now I need more than that. I need characters. I need story. I need a movie that is not shot in a really obnoxious visual style. I need a movie that shows that it's been made with some thought and some care and some creativity and some ingenuity. And you can't tell if any of that's going to be there. And judging by the previous film, Man of Steel, it's not. So I try to be optimistic, but there's just not a whole lot to be optimistic about. Unless you're just a fanboy and all you care about is seeing Batman and Superman in the same movie. If that's all you care about, then you're probably going to like the movie, and you probably think that the stuff that came out at Comic-Con related to that was awesome. But it just doesn't do it for me. I mean, there's Batman on the roof, and it's raining, and he pulls the little tarp off the bat signal, and he looks up, and then Superman is like floating menacingly with his little red eyes glowing, and he's like, you see what I did to Metropolis? Now I'm gonna do that to Gotham City, because that's what I do, because I wreck cities, because I'm Superman. And then lightning like crashes through the sky. Just like in The Dark Knight Returns. And like in The Dark Knight Returns, the lightning and the thunder signifies that it's time for
the lightning round. Rapid fire questions, glib and adequate answers.
That doesn't make sense, does it? There's no lightning round in The Dark Knight Returns. They're not answering questions. They're fighting each other and shit. Anyway, XZR. Hey Steve, I once read that when some foreign films are subtitled, the words don't usually match the original script. Should that ruin my viewing experience, knowing that the subs aren't always the same with what the writer originally wrote? No, I don't think so. A lot of it's just lost in translation type of stuff, And honestly, it's not like you have a choice. Unless you want to just go ahead and learn and become fluent in the language that the film is originally made in, you really don't have a choice. It's either subtitles or having a dubbed version, and they both have the same issues in terms of, the exactness of the translation. And I would much rather see a subtitled movie than a dubbed movie. Jesse Steck, Steve, are there any really bad and or stupid ideas you've ever actually believed? For example, I am what I like to call a deconverted conspiracy theorist. Yes, when I was younger, I believed in both the Kennedy assassination conspiracy and the 9/11 conspiracy theory. Then I tried a funny thing. I read the arguments against them. Was there ever a time when you fell for such bullshit? Prunes. Whatever prunes means. Is that like a hip thing that I'm not hip to? Yeah, I think I've mentioned this before, actually. I used to believe in, like, talking to the dead, like mediums. You could contact people who are on the other side, like the John Edward thing. I used to believe that, or at least I used to really want to believe that. Whether I actually believed it or not, I'm not really sure, but I used to really want to believe that. And obviously I don't anymore. And it was actually a really good friend of mine who sort of started me down the path of realizing that was horseshit and that it was actually kind of horrible what people like that do. But yeah, and reading the arguments against stuff like that, conspiracy theories, reading the arguments against them is an awesome way of coming out of that if you are a conspiracy theorist. And not just reading them and then looking for, doing the conspiracy theorist thing and trying to dismiss them, but reading them and actually thinking about them. Very important. Der Wunderbar Bar. Would you have liked to live in Springfield, Simpsons? And just in case, who would you like to have as a neighbor? Yeah, Springfield seems like a fun place to live. I would love to have Flanders as my neighbor. If I couldn't just live in the Simpsons house, I would want to live the other house, like on the other side of the Flanders that you never really see. Because God, Ned Flanders must be the best neighbor in the world. He's a complete pushover. You can walk all over him. You can steal his fucking stuff. And the great thing is, if I lived on the other side of Flanders, I could rob him fucking blind because he's always worried about Homer. He'll never see me coming. Alessandro B., you had to ask number 95. What are your thoughts about the universe? A one-off, multiverse, parallel, a white hole from another universe black hole? I know the answer is I don't know, but thoughts? Do you have a favorite hypothesis? Yeah, actually I did a story on And Now the Good News a couple weeks ago about a version of the multiverse that they're trying to actually test. And it's the version where after the Big Bang, the universe as it was expanding, it underwent inflation, where the universe, where space and time expanded incredibly fast, far faster than it ever has since. This rapid expansion. And during inflation, according to this theory, certain areas of time and space expanded, inflated at different rates. And so space sort of bubbled and closed around into these different little pockets, these pocket universes. And that's how we have, and that created multiple universes, that each bubble within space-time became its own closed universe. And our universe is but one of those bubbles. And I'm fascinated by that. I think that's a really elegant, beautiful theory. I have no idea if it's true. They're trying to test to see if it's true or not. I have no idea. It's not. It doesn't have any of the. It doesn't quite have the limitless possibilities of like quantum multiple universes, like the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. But it's in terms of just the image of it and the explanation for how it came about. I really like that version of the multiverse. Radical Bacon, would you ever go to the YouTube convention VidCon if expense didn't matter? Probably not. I'm not big on conventions. Unless I had a reason to be there, like personally, like if I was like if it was like an atheist convention or something and I was invited to sit on a panel or something, I would go to that. That would probably be fun and would feed my raging narcissism. But just to go just as an attendee, no, I don't like cons. I've been to a few with the movie company because we went, to show a movie or to have a table and sell merch, and it's not my favorite thing to do. Model Major PETA. I know of a feminist-owned strip club and a feminist-owned sex toy plus porn store in Seattle. Why do you think that sexuality has to be objectifying and degrading rather than empowering? Well, I don't. It doesn't have to be objectifying and degrading. I would love for it to be empowering. I think that it should never be objectifying and degrading, but sadly it often is. And it's not an innate quality of sexuality, it's how people use sexuality to exploit and demean and degrade people. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not saying that sexuality is necessarily those negative things. It's not, and it should never be. Jason Brenet, hey Steve, how should I cut and style my hair? My suggestion is to go for the full vanilla ice. Big old pompadour in the front and a high top fade on either side. The full vanilla ice, Jason. Do that. Bob Smearfack. Steve, my question is in two parts. Your ability to engage the camera while staying on script is great. Do you use a teleprompter in any of your videos? And on a related note, are you wearing a bra today? Warmest regards, Bob Smearfack. The great Bob Smearfack, ladies and gentlemen. No, I don't use a teleprompter. I don't have a teleprompter. On the videos where I do use a script, I have memorized the script. I've at least memorized enough of it to get through a nice long take. And then I can cut to something else and then come back. No teleprompter. And as for the second part of your question, no. Randy Owens. Hey Steve, back in You Had to Ask number 83, you were asked which of the apologists you've addressed was the most aggravating and said Josh McDowell. I then asked if you'd be willing to reconsider that after you finished reading some Ray Comfort, which you had just said you were taking on next. By the time You Had to Ask number 95 goes up, you'll have finished the Comfort books, so it's time to find out. Is Mr. McDowell still the king, or has he been usurped? And then there's a little footnote. Well, technically, I suppose you were asked in 82 and answered in 83. You know what I mean. Indeed I do, my friend. Yeah, I would say Josh McDowell is still tops as far as aggravating apologists. Ray Comfort, once you figure out his act, which doesn't take very long, very aggravating. Don't get me wrong. Incredibly aggravating. Incredibly maddening in many ways. But Josh McDowell has it over Ray because Josh McDowell is just as stupid and dishonest as Ray Comfort is, but he also has this added layer of arrogant megalomania where I mean, the thing about Ray Comfort that I'll give him credit for is Ray Comfort, at least in the books I read, I can't speak for anything else, he never pulled the I humiliated an Ivy League professor in front of his whole class trick. And he admitted that I was right. Like, Josh McDowell does that shamelessly. Josh McDowell writes in his book, Evidence That Demands a Verdict, that I did that series on, about how he was planning on running for office. He was planning on becoming the governor of Michigan, and he speaks about this as though this was a foregone conclusion until he got saved and focused on other things. He's just an egomaniac and utterly without shame. So yeah, he's still number one. But Ray is right up there. Ray is, believe me, Ray Comfort is nipping at his heels. But it's that attitude and that arrogance of Josh McDowell, that preposterous air of, look at what I gave up to become a Christian, completely in his own head, that makes him the most aggravating. So yeah. Hey, that's it for the questions. Before I get out of here, I want to do a shout out as always. And the shout out this week goes to a well-deserving channel. It's a little bit redundant for me to say that because they all are well-deserving, at least in my judgment. Anyway, this week it goes to The Chemistry Question. The Chemistry Question might be a familiar name to some of you who watch this series because he has asked questions before. He's a viewer of mine, a subscriber of mine, and he has his own damn channel, and it's pretty damn good. As you might guess from his username, there's a lot on his channel about science, about chemistry. It's really good for that sort of thing. He also does videos. He just started a series actually a couple weeks ago, and I hope he continues this, on pseudoscience. And he calls it woodoscience, which I think is a really clever term. It's like a portmanteau of woo-woo and pseudoscience. Woodoscience. And the first one of those woodoscience the first one of those woodoscience videos is about crystal healing. And sort of debunking that. And he's always very succinct. His videos are usually pretty short. He's really good. He's really smart. And that is the shout out. The Chemistry Question. Check out that channel. Way under-subbed. So show him a little bit of attention. See if it's your type of thing. And subscribe if you dig it like I do. Anyway, that's it for this week. Before I get out of here, though, I do have a brief announcement. This weekend, this Sunday, if you're watching this as I upload the video, Jason with a D and I will be doing another late seating movie review on Jason with a D's channel. It'll start, and if you want to watch it live, it's our Google Hangout show. You can watch it live on Sunday starting at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, or you can just watch it on Jason with a D's YouTube channel afterwards because it gets uploaded and archived automatically. We'll be doing a late seating movie review of Armageddon. That's going to be a good one. Believe me, I just actually watched Armageddon again last night, and I have some things to say. So that'll be a fun show. So watch me and Jason with a D of Opinionville on Jason with a D's YouTube channel. A late seating movie review of Armageddon. That's this weekend. That's this Sunday. Check it out. I would love for you guys to watch it. Anyway, that's it for this week. I will be back next week to do this all over again, provided, of course, that you guys ask me some questions. Because in order for me to do this, you have to ask. So leave a comment on this video asking me a question for next time. Ask me anything about anything. Nothing is too serious. Nothing is too silly. I will answer as many of them as I possibly can next time. And until then, take care, everybody. I'll see you.